Today we're gonna kind of be extending this ginormous beehive garden that I made onto the next door lot because I decided, that it would be a great idea to just actually make this entire neighborhood like one ginormous garden with all these different lots on it. So today we're gonna be doing birdhouses, and I'm starting off here with my mannequin out for scale. And I've made these two little floor plans, and we're actually going to bring in this circle that I made in the last video, which was my 5,000 planks video. So, I thought I spent all of this time making all of these weird saved rooms with all sorts of plank shapes in them. I might as well use it, and that's a perfect circle for a bird box. So, I'm using those, and then I'm also going to come in with these businesses and hobbies divider things, which we're going to use as a roof. So the first two birdhouses we're making here are actually quite difficult to work with if you're actually going to play inside them, or Sims can go inside them, but the ceilings don't vanish because they aren't ceilings, they're these wooden divider things. And the reason I did this is because before I started building these birdhouses, I sort of created some walls, and I used the maximum wall heights for all 4 levels so that we can get these birdhouses really high up in a tree that we're going to put in later on, which means if I put roofs on them, these birdhouses would be really, really, really tall. So to shrink them down, I'm making my own roofs. But yeah, that does mean we can't really look inside them. So when I'm putting these on, I'm sort of leaving one of them where they aren't double slatted, so you can look through the top of them. You can also look through the hole at the front. But yeah, these two aren't the easiest to actually use. We're going to make some more functional things after we've done these two. But of course, as usual, I'm using lots of tool mods just to tilt these and rotate them. And we're going to be placing a hell of a lot more planks. You'd have thought after the last video that I would be sick of these cottage cheese living roof beams, but apparently I'm not, because we're going to be using a lot of them again to create these walls, because obviously it's quite hard to make a triangular wall. So we're going to be using that, and we also need to use these because we can't have a circular bird entry in one of the in-game walls. It's not going to let us do that, so we're going to make our own fake walls. And we're going to start off with all of these roof beams, which I've rotated so that the nicest surface is kind of facing the front. And while I'm placing these over and over again, which is the content obviously everyone is here for, I would just say, if I sound a bit erratic today, it's because I am. Today was almost a meltdown day, but I managed to avoid that. I am getting the keys to a new place in 3 days' time, and then I have a 2-week period where I have to move literally everything, clean this place, set up in the new place. I already don't deal with change at the best of times, so today was the day that my brain was like, maybe we just retreat right now, because if there's too many steps to a plan, which in this one there's a lot. There's organize, throw stuff out, clean, move the things, settle into a new place, organize stuff in the new place. If there's more than 3 steps to a plan, I just freeze up. I roll into a ball like an armadillo. I can't deal with it. So I've been having to really do some mental gymnastics today to figure out how I'm going to manage my next 2 weeks. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because I think I'm going to have to say, I was going to try and do 2 videos a week. I think I'm just going to have to do 1 video a week for a couple of weeks, just because I'm going to be so preoccupied organizing and moving, etc., etc. So I just wanted to bring that up as things might be a bit less on schedule over the next couple of weeks. But I do plan to continue and hopefully still get some stuff out. I'm really trying my hardest to manage my time. It's not my best. I'm not the best at doing that. But anyway, we've placed these planks at the front, made this wall, using them along the top to create sort of a roof piece. And we're going to save this as a floor plan, as a room, flip it around, and then sort of adjust this wall a bit to create a hind wall, which was, thinking about it, was a bit necessary because I think most of this gets hidden in the tree when we put the tree in, but never mind. It's about knowing it's there, just having it complete is what it's about. So we're going to nudge this in and create this back wall. I'm saving a lot of using my trick I sort of came up with in my last build where I create things and save them as rooms so that I can then rotate them round, which is a really handy trick, obviously, for saving time. I've done a little cut here as I've placed all of these planks in this other triangular shaped one, because you don't need to watch me place that many. You've sort of seen what I'm doing. And now we're building up these 4 levels. You can see the walls are very high, and these levels are larger than these houses, which again is why I explained, is why I use these business no hobbies dividers to make more of a shallow house rather than using the in-game height of the walls, because the birdhouses were looking too big when I tried that as a little bit of a test. So to move these up, it's just a case of like moving the room really. And these ceiling bits didn't move, so I had to just like place these back on again, but that wasn't much trouble because thankfully when you rotate these with the tool mod, they stay that orientation, so it's not like I have to do all of that again. I just had to move them and sort of rearrange them as a roof. But after we did the bee hotel, I just really loved this idea of thinking about all sorts of different things that like magical garden fairies like that are really small might live in a garden, and birdhouses was just a really fun idea that I wanted to do. And I had already sort of touched the bird idea with my first fairy build, which was a bird cage. So I wanted to do this and sort of continue and see how whimsical and weird we can get with this expansion, while there's an excuse to just be all fantastical and do bizarre things. So, I also really like this challenge of making a really big garden and just seeing, you know, how big we can make this. And I do end up sort of getting a bit too into this one and making a little bit of lore when it comes to decorating it, but there we go. You'll see that in a bit. So moving this triangular one up as well. And again, just had to replace these roof things. It's really easy. Now that I've almost mastered rooms, I'm surprised I didn't use the saving rooms tool and moving rooms around before. It's so much easier to just make these things on the floor rather than trying to do it all. Like, imagine if I'd put the tree in first and then tried to make it all high up in the tree. It would have been so much harder than just making it flat on the floor. And while we're moving this up, I just also wanted to say that I think there's been a slight issue recently where I'm not seeing some comments on videos, and I'm always very, you know, strict with myself that I always reply to comments, or at least, you know, give them a heart or whatever. So if you leave a comment and it looks like I've not replied to it, it's likely just not showing up in my comments list that I have on the little creator studio thing. I did suspect that was happening, but I have had it confirmed recently in a couple of instances where comments aren't showing for me. So please know I'm not ignoring anyone if I haven't replied. There's just some kind of issue currently it's not currently working as intended. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I don't want anyone to think that I'm ignoring them. Because, you know, like, people put a lot of effort into comments. The least I can do is at least give it like a love heart or whatever. So we placed these two on this tree, and we're now going to make a third one, and I wanted this one to be more angled, so that's why I'm making this bizarre sort of like wall thing. That's not going to stay there. That's just so I can create this shape of where I plan to put this third and final birdhouse. We're also going to do a bird table once we've done this, but you can see I'm sort of replicating the shape on the floor so that I can create this third birdhouse on the ground where it's easier, and then we'll move that up in the same way we did the first two. So we're going to use similar things. We're going to use the roof beams and the businesses no hobbies wooden divider things, but this one's going to be a little bit more interesting. And this one was one that I was looking up birdhouse styles, and this one's one that I found that was on Pinterest, and I quite liked how it looked. So first of all, we're going to get this circle in. So I'm just placing the original one, but that one's it's not on an angle, so we're going to have to select all of that. Just rotate it with the tool mod, and then elevate it up again. The slats at the very top of this did nudge down a little bit, and they also nudged back a little bit as well. So I fixed them on the like Z-axis, but they do remain sort of a little bit further back. But most, you can't really tell because it sort of gets covered up by the planks we're going to add a bit later on anyway. So this one's going to be like a 2-story, but not actually 2-story because it's all on 1 story. It's going to have the illusion that it's a 2-story one. And it looks a bit like, it almost looked like a birdhouse that was meant to look a bit more like an actual house rather than the typical birdhouse shape, which is why I liked this sort of design. So we're going to put a ceiling on it here using, again, these partitions. And then we're going to use a longer one because obviously these come in 3 sizes. So it's the shortest ones we've put on the top. I'm going to double those up to create a more like, you know, uniform roof. And then we're going to use a longer one to create a second roof to make this look like it's 2 stories, where we're going to sort of divide this where I've used the half wall, which is actually the normal height wall if you were to just have the lowest wall height on a level. And we're going to angle that down and sort of divide this a little bit so it looks like, you know, there's 2 levels. There's actually not, obviously. And the Sims can't use this upper level, but they can use the level below. And this one, because you can see through the archways, is far more easy to actually, for Sims to navigate and for you to see what they're doing inside. So we're actually going to make this one functional when we come to decorating it. And the other two we are going to put things inside them, but they're going to be used more like fairy storage birdhouses, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But I'm getting the cottage cheese living roof beams out again. You know, I placed 5,000 last time. I'm sure this one's probably in the thousands as well. But I just can't get enough of these beams, apparently. We're going to cover up this circle again. But I'm going to use them in this little section here because we didn't, you know, I didn't want too many roof beams. I was a bit sick of roof beams. I say that, and yet I'm still using them. And it's funny because doing these fairy builds, I found myself in a part of, like, Pinterest that is not houses, but is like miniature houses. You know, tiny little miniatures, doll houses, but like full complex recreations of modern houses and like actual towns and things. And I just have this itch now. I might, I kind of want a miniature. I kind of want a miniature house. I don't know what. Maybe that's my new hobby. Do I make miniatures? Is that lame? Oh, and I just have a load of miniature houses between all of my plants, which is my other obsession. But I'm wondering what to do next after I've done these birdhouses. Because I'm also finding myself looking at a lot of things that are like upcycled, you know, biodiversity animal insect shelters that people have in their back gardens and things. And that's also really making me wish that I actually had a garden that I could put my own things in and not like a rented one that I can't change. But alas, I cannot do that. So at least I can do it in The Sims now. But this one actually, this lot is not going to be a residential. It's saved as a residential and you could use it as a residential. But as I went through this, I sort of decided this is more of a like community space for all of the little garden insects and birds. And that leaves a lot open for like, if we move around this neighborhood, what other insect species or you know, garden species of flying things do we make? And I'm thinking there's obviously like butterflies, there's moths. Moths kind of come into it in this one a little bit later on. There's obviously birds, hummingbirds. I'm kind of wanting to do like a dragonfly build and have it be like a pond area, like a layered pond, maybe with some underwater building in it or something. That's kind of an idea that I'm having. But have a think and see if you can think of anything and let me know. But we're just finishing off this one. I'm using these, you know, can you guess what piece it is? Oh my gosh, it's the cottage cheese living roof beam again as a little fence. And then we're almost ready to move this up to the tree so that we'll have our 3 birdhouses sort of surrounded by this nice tree, which I don't know what pack that's from. But I've done it here. I didn't show you. It was a bit of a mess. I've recolored them. Again, I didn't show you because that took a while. But these are the sort of settled palettes that I think worked really nicely. And I was also trying to make sure that this worked nicely when you moved the camera and looked at the bee hotel next door. But this little sort of balcony area was a bit too much. So we're just going to nudge that in just a little bit before we move on. And when I make adjustments up here, the tree sort of wants to disappear. So I have to scale that down and move it up again. But here's the mannequin, so you can see for scale that these are actually like large buildings. And we're going to start with the bird table, which again I'm doing on the floor to begin with. So this is the top of the table, and then we will create some structure to lift this up after we've done that. And originally I was going to use this full wall height for the table, but it started to, proportionally it was looking a bit weird. So I'm starting off by doing that, but we will change that. But I'm just splitting this into an outer level and an inner level because I saw a picture of a bird table and it was built like this, and that's basically the reason why. But I try and put a roof on this. And number one, I didn't like the roof, and I couldn't really decide what palette to go with for the roof tiles, and it was looking a bit tall. So of course, we're going to have a little bit of a cut here where I've made my own roof. And I've made a quarter of it, again, with the cottage cheese living roof beams. And we're going to rotate that around. But I'm also going to make my own little archways for this. So I've done that flat on the floor. And then we're just going to rotate that with the tool mod so it stands up vertically. And we're going to place those around as well. And again, I had to do all of this so that the bird table could be more shallow than the actual wall height is at this level. And you know, I could have done this and just kept the wall height for an easy time, but when do I do anything easy? I just don't, do I? So I need to adjust this a tiny bit. Some of the things got left behind during the rotation. But once we've done that, we're going to save this as a room. And then it's just as easy as copy and pasting it round. I could have done some angled ones as well, but I decided that, you know, it wasn't really necessary, so I did skip doing that. But now we're going to draw a room around this roof that I've made, and I've also put some plant pots at the top here that are meant to be sort of like a wooden piece at the top there. They don't look like it, but that's what it's meant to be. So now we've saved this, we can place it down and delete some of the beams so we're not repeating those, and then just copy paste this around. And it does leave behind the lowest two of the what are these, like slats, I guess. So I have to go around and place those back in again. However, once we've done that, we're going to nudge this down a little bit, just so, you know, to make it a bit more shallow. But when you move down a level with this one, the roof does actually disappear because I've deliberately placed a lot of the roof on the level above. So when you move down a level, most of that disappears and you're just left with this sort of slight ring around it. So this is far easier to, I guess, play in if you were going to play in this. Again, there's lots of tool mod in this, but you don't need tool mod to use a build that was made with tool mod. However, I will say my PC is having some issues with this build. And I don't know if it's my PC or if it's my save file. I think it's my PC. But basically what's happening is when I then try and leave the lot, on the loading screen my game freezes and I have to restart it. So I don't know. See if it works for you if you want to. I'm not quite sure if I've just broken the game or what's going on. But we're moving this up onto this bird table. I've obviously just made it with some, you know, it's meant to be a wooden pole underneath it. It's just a 1x1 tile room 3 times to make it up above. Because they're fairies, they don't need stairs or ladders, so they can just teleport up here. If you wanted to use this with a sim who's not a fairy, then good luck, they can't get up here. Moving this did remove the platform though, so I'm just having to recreate that again. And there was some weird glitch where it wasn't showing the edge of the platform, but once I then placed a texture on that, it sort of reappeared again, so I'm not quite sure what that was about. I'm always finding all sorts of weird glitches and things because I'm playing the game in a way it wasn't designed, so it never really surprises me anymore. I'm like, what will fix this? And then somehow it figures itself out in the end. Now, to make this look more like a bird table, I'm going to use, again, the roof beams. Shock, horror. But I'm going to make them larger this time, and we're going to rotate some of them to look like these sort of horizontal connections that these wooden... I don't know. I'm not a carpenter. I don't know what it is. But, you know, this is what a bird table looks like, so we're doing it. And then we're going to use the same size, but we're just not going to rotate those ones, have them flat on the floor. And I was like, you know, it's got some support. It's not going to blow over at the slightest breeze. So I've coloured that in, and now we're going to move around and do the larger scaling up of this garden that we've done. I couldn't decide what tree to use. Originally, I thought I wanted this one because it sort of matched with the fairy lights on the other one, but in the end, I thought that was a bit excessive. It was a bit too cluttered, I guess it looked. So we're using a different one that sort of matches the bark colour of the other one a little bit more to imply that this tree stump we've put in here has a new, you know, tree sprout growing out of it. Also using some planters to put one in front of this tree because we wanted this to look like an actual garden, not just some sort of wilderness area. And most of this is live edit stuff from the new pack. I tried to keep it mostly in the new pack. And there's a nice like soil in there now, so I put some of that in. But we're going to make a puddle because the beehive build also has a puddle. And if you did want to use this as a residential, it provides somewhere for the fairy to clean themselves. Because that's one thing they can't actually do in that little fairy house. They can do pretty much everything else in there, but they cannot clean, so they need some water. I was very pernickety about what I wanted this puddle to look like, and I didn't know what I wanted it to look like. I just knew what I wanted it to not look like. So there's a lot of alterations going on here. I was almost just doing things until the puddle revealed itself to me, and I was happy with it. So we're changing the water source to a pond one, so it's not, you know, it doesn't look like a swimming pool. And we're just going to do a load of faffing around with the terrain really until I decide that this is adequate. And I can't tell you really why I didn't think it was decent enough before, but my brain said it wasn't, so that's why we're just messing around with this so much. Oh, and another thing I wanted to say is apparently there's this new thing like viewer posts on the community page, which I enabled this week, and I have no idea what it does. but apparently you can do that now. So there you go. You all probably know how it works better than I do. I have no idea, but apparently you can post on that now, like I guess pictures of your own builds or something. I'm not quite sure, but I have enabled that. So now we're moving in. We're gonna create this flower bed just using some of these smaller flowers, scaling them up, and then this other plant that's from the new pack, which I'm not really sure what it's meant to be, but it looks great when you use it as a plant that's meant to look like a scaled up plant. And then some more of these. What are these? I don't know outdoor plants because I'm not allowed a garden, so that no one can blame me. So I'm filling this in just with a few different sort of sizes of plants. And then we're gonna do some grass. And again, these ones that are really thick work really well when you size them up to look like, create this small looking world on a very large scale effect that we're going for here. And then again, because we're trying to make this look like it's, very large scale zoomed in, we can't just leave the grass. We're going to create some grass texture as well. But I've done this using this live edit grass that we're using a variety of them to sort of create a variety of textures, but the one at the front is just a very shallow one that matches the ground texture, just to give it a bit more interest. Placed a few little pebbles and things on the puddle. Technically it's a lake, but it's a puddle in the scale of this build. And then I'm just going to use the terrain paint to, again, create a bit more detail, make this look a bit muddy, make it look a bit used, tie everything in to try and make it look less like it's just stuck together with all sorts of clean divides between it. Merge it all into one cohesive garden looking thing. And then I think we're pretty much done with the garden. Are we? Oh no, apparently I wanted to just place a few more rocks in. I wasn't happy enough with how that looked. I needed a few more rocks. Oh, and we're going to do, of course, it's a fairy build, so we also need some mushrooms. Not too many though, because I didn't want it to look too ridiculous. Because no one wants a load of mushrooms growing out of their garden. But in this one, make it look a bit more mystical, magical. So now we're actually going to do some of the interior work. And most of the interior is going to be this bird table. And I had this idea with the bird table that was far too in-depth. But my brain was coming up with all sorts of lore around this garden, especially with the bee hotel thing being next to it. And I decided that essentially this is like a council meeting spot for the fairies in the garden. Because of course they have garden politics, because why wouldn't they? So we have this council meeting spot, which is where the day insects and the night insects meet to just discuss, I don't know, like plant shenanigans. I don't know, like what's the quality of the soil, what garden drama is going on right now. And essentially that's what this birdhouse is used for. So it's like a government meeting spot. I don't know. But we're just making it very floral. And my idea behind this is that there's some kind of, I guess, like magic where whoever owns this property, which is presumably some like old woman. If you know my other builds, I feel like it's Bonkers Betty who actually owns this garden. So she's left her glasses there. But all of this fairy decorating stuff, she can't see that because it's just hidden by non-explained fairy magic, I guess. So we just need to nudge these slightly down with the tool mod because they were floating up because, platforms don't really work properly, do they? But we've made a yellow version for the day insects, if that wasn't obvious, and it's got bees on it because the bees. And then the night version is like a purpley colour. And I was thinking that it would be like moths that would be in the night version of the insects. But they're all coming together to discuss, the state of the garden. It's a bit like Toy Story, like Andy's coming and then they all disappear. Except it's Bonkers Betty's coming and then they all disappear. But I just went with this theme and I used mostly the stuff from the new pack. And we got this very yellow, sunny, sort of bright side. And then I didn't want the night version to look evil or anything. So that's just more like purpley subdued, still very colourful though. And we're just going to repeat what we're doing here on the yellow side onto the purple side. And I think this worked quite well as well because yellow and purple are, like complementary colours that are opposite each other on the colour wheel. So that was good. And just using a selection of all of these different ivy pieces, which I'm not quite sure I quite like these, but they worked with this, I guess because I was using mostly the stuff from that pack that they're designed to work with anyway. But normally I find them quite desaturated. I prefer a brighter green. So I'm trying to pick a palette here. So I picked this rug out from the new pack, and it's obviously the bright day colors rug. And then we're going to repeat that on the other side, and it comes in a more like night looking version. This build is almost like wanted to be made. It just sort of worked well with the palette that was available and the swatches of all the items that are available. I also used some of the new plant pots with these, but I no longer place plants in them because I have learned that those plants do perish. So if I ever, do actual cinematics with Sims in them, typically by the end of it, they've just rotten. So I don't put any plants in them, but you obviously can put plants in them. I'll just put this on the gallery and then anyone can do whatever they want with it. But I wanted to create a little bit of a story for this, for my world, for me to imagine, what's going on in this build. And on the gallery, I've had some people say they can't find me. It's TTSimmer, capital T, capital S, Immer. So it should be fairly easy to find. But yes, that's me on the gallery. It will be in the description as well. I was very much just living my Pixar fantasy making this, because it's almost like a combination between Toy Story and A Bug's Life, which I was obsessed with both of those when I was a kid. So now we're going to move over to this other birdhouse. This is the only birdhouse that we actually put furnishings in, because the other two are a bit difficult because you can't see inside them. This one wasn't the easiest either. Like, it wasn't letting me place things through this stupid archway. So the camera's all over the place. Sorry, but it's, it was quite difficult. But I'm making this an apothecary, and I have no idea what the apothecary does because I don't play the live mode thing. But it's in here. I thought, why not add it? It's a new thing. But now we're going to go through and have a look at the cinematics. So you can see there are things inside these other birdhouses, which we will go and look at. But first, we're going to look at the garden as a whole. And I think this meshed really well with the bee hotel next door, considering it's a separate lot that I've tied these together. And that's what I kind of want to do for the rest of this neighborhood. But here we'll zoom in on the bird table. I did try and put some Sims in this, but I was having issues with my PC. I think it's my PC, it's just on its way out. So unfortunately, it's just a non-real-time sort of look through. But we'll look around at this apothecary area. I did sort of light this up a little bit too, so there is some lights for nighttime. And that tree lights up as well, obviously. But here in this triangular birdhouse, I put some like bits of wool and some leaves because I'm thinking that the fairies could use that as resources to like build things or make, warmth in winter. And then this other one I put crystals in because I think they like to collect crystals. I like to think fairies are a bit like magpies. But yeah, that's this build. The next one in our like ginormous garden series. Thank you so much for watching. Be kind to yourselves and I will see you in the next one.